we're thrilled to have Kiandra here today. She has been working with us for a couple years. She's a really wonderful educator, and she's really committed to encouraging students to show them that everyone can succeed in mathematics. She formerly at Morehouse, now a senior instructor at Spelman. She's also a consultant for the Sure Foundation, and has done a lot of really good education and educational workshop type of stuff in digital and in the mathematics community. So I am going to go ahead and pass it over to her and let her take this away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you again. Thank you, Scott, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on today. Today, our goal is to make this webinar as interactive as possible, as engaging as possible. So if you can go ahead and type in, you can either do it on your phone or on the computer, and type in the link that you see here. So https:// type in that link, and so that way you can join our iClicker session and you can actually get a full experience of what it would feel like to be in one of my classes or to use the remote response system in the classroom. So that may take about maybe 1 to 2 minutes. So if you can go ahead and click on that link, and you'll see that link periodically throughout the presentation.
I'm going to go ahead and put that in the questions as well, or in the chat, I should say. So everyone, instead of having to type it in, people can just go ahead and click on it. So
awesome.
It's not required that you do this. You're going to get more out of the experience and learn more about how this works if you're able to participate with it. So it is encouraged. You will still be able to learn about how this works without doing this, but if you're able to, if you're in a situation where you're able to, we really encourage you to do it. Sorry, carry on, Kiandra.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so as Scott mentioned, I'm a senior instructor of mathematics at Spelman College. And for a few years, I've been working with Macmillan Learning on their Achieve product for calculus. A little bit about me. Spelman College is a small liberal arts college, and it's a part of the AUC, Atlanta University Center Consortium. And it's a set of colleges, which means that even though Spelman is a women's college, a small liberal arts women's college, we have students that would attend Clark Atlanta University or that would attend Morehouse College because the students can cross-register. A couple of courses that I've taught, just some background information. I've taught courses anywhere from intermediate algebra to the calculus series to general statistics. At one point in my career, I was an adjunct professor at Strayer University, and I had the privilege of teaching a graduate course in quantitative literacy. So I've taught a range of courses, and also, as many of you, because of the academic era that we're in right now, I've taught several online courses, but even pre-pandemic, even pre-virtual learning, I taught several online courses. So pretty well versed in both in-person and online pedagogy. So again, if you would like to join, as Scott said, it's not required, but just to be engaged and to have a little fun, if you would like to join the course so that you can engage throughout the webinar, that would be fantastic. All right, so for our first bit of engagement, I just want to do a temperature check and see who our audience is and who's out there. So what is your experience with student response systems? What is your experience with student response systems? So you should now be able to answer this question. Okay, and maybe when we get to maybe about 5 responses or 30 seconds, whichever one comes first, then I'll go ahead and review the results. So, or maybe I'll wait a couple more minutes for this first one. Maybe some people are still logging in. So again, what is your experience with student response systems? A, I have no experience. B, you've used them as an instructor. C, you've used them as an audience member, as in today. So after today, you'll be able to answer C if you've never used them before, or D, I've discussed them with faculty members, but maybe you've never used them, or if you have some other type of experience with student response systems. Okay, I'll give maybe about 5 more seconds. Again, what is your experience with student response systems? All right, so looking at our results, I see that we have a very diverse crowd. So looking at student response systems and using response systems for peer learning, let's review the agenda really quickly. So what am I going to talk about today? So first, I'm going to talk about some different terminology. I know, again, in the current era of education, we're hearing a lot of different terms, but not everyone is meaning the same thing when they use different terms. So I'm going to review the terminology, so just so we're on one accord with what I mean by what terms I'm using. Then we'll talk about course structure. What do my courses look like, and how do I incorporate student response systems to engage students and to assist with peer learning? And then I'm going to show you a very explicit tool of how this operates in my classes. All right, so first with terminology. So in today's era, we have a lot of different educational modalities going on. We have in-person education or in-person instruction. We have synchronous learning. We have asynchronous learning, and we also have hybrid learning. In-person, students meet in an on-campus classroom. Students are learning the same things, having the same type of activities, attending a lecture, a laboratory, all at the same time. And in synchronous courses, students are still learning the same thing at the same time. However, they're doing it using some type of online or distance education platform. In asynchronous learning, it's not existing or happening at the same time. So students are accessing their learning maybe through lecture videos that are posted on your LMS, or some type of assignments that you've posted. So students are engaging with the same material, but at different times, different locations. And that's also referred to as location independent learning. And then we have many people are doing now is a hybrid form of learning. As we're going back to campus, but not all campuses, some campuses are open, some campuses are not. And even with campuses being open, some of our students aren't able to attend for various reasons. So I know a lot of educators are using the hybrid model and also using high flex model, which I'm not going to talk about that today. But if you would like to know more about high flex, then just send me an email, or you can ask your question at the end of the presentation. So hybrid is just a combination of synchronous and asynchronous. And it allows for a lot more flexibility, I would say, for the instructor, as well as the student. So based on what I've discussed so far, what is your preferred modality of learning? Is it A, in person? So what do you prefer most? Do you prefer to teach your courses in person or synchronously, kind of similar to what we're doing now, or asynchronously or hybrid, or are you still undecided? Haven't really decided what works best for you. And as you can see, we have the timer going down at the bottom. I'm going to give it maybe about 15 more seconds. Let's get to maybe about 45. And then we'll look at the results. So again, what's your preferred modality for learning? Okay, I see some more responses coming in, so I'll wait maybe about 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so we can see based on the responses that not many people like asynchronous, okay, and not many people for synchronous, but more people prefer in person. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for responding and for participating. All right, so which modality are you most comfortable delivering for your courses? I'm not going to make this a clicker question, but as we're going through our webinar on today, I do want you to think about this question and maybe we can revisit it at the end. So let's look at my course structure now that we're on one accord with our terminology and what we're discussing. So for my course structure, I like to embrace the gradual release model in all of my courses. So I'm in math, again, as a reminder. So what typically happens is I have maybe a 10 to 15 minute lecture. I try to keep my lecture to a minimum of maybe 15 minutes. And then we'll do some problems, or I'll do some problems within that lecture. And then the students have an opportunity to join me in doing problems. And then I'll put them in groups. If we're in person, I'll put them in groups and they can do problems together. And then they have an opportunity to do problems on their own, to do their own self-assessment. So when we are doing synchronous courses, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you guys what I prefer. I actually prefer in-person and hybrid. So I like to do in-person classes because there's a certain energy that I get from my students from being in person. But if we can't be in person, then hybrid would be my option. So when I am doing hybrid and it has a synchronous component, then how do I still maintain student interaction in the classroom? So it's very important to me for the students to interact with me on a daily basis. So I do ask the students to have their cameras on. I know there's some privacy issues with that, so I just ask my students, hey, if you have an issue, just let me know. But I do explain to them that with their cameras on, it does help with student engagement, and we have to have the cameras on when we're doing assessments. Also, for student-teacher interaction, we use the whiteboard feature on Zoom. So I'm using Zoom when I'm in my synchronous classrooms. When I am in person, then I'm just using the whiteboard in the front of the classroom. So for student-to-student interaction, if I'm online, then I'll use breakout groups or breakout rooms on Zoom. So the breakout rooms are great for group work and collaboration. It still allows the students to have their individual whiteboard. If they were in person, they would have paper and pencil in front of them, and they're working together. They're learning from their peers. They're going through the questions or the problems together, asking and answering each other questions. So whether in person or online, that activity allows them to build community with each other and to learn from each other. And then when we're in class, once I've taught and they've had an opportunity to interact with each other and to interact with me, then it's time for some type of activity like an iClicker activity. So this allows the student to have a student self-interaction. With the iClicker or any student response. So I prefer iClicker, so that's what I'll be discussing most of the webinar. But with any student response, the student gets immediate feedback, so they can assess their own learning. I know most times when we promote student response systems, we're talking about from a professor's perspective and how, yes, it gives immediate feedback and it gives us information about if the students are mastering the material before moving on to the next content area. However, what I've most recently been observing in my students is it gives them the opportunity to assess their own learning, right? So once we have an iClicker, I hear things like, oh man, I did get that right, or oh, I thought I understood that. And so that gives the students an opportunity to assess themselves and me an opportunity to assess them. And then we can have a discussion about what do we need to do next? And so that promotes just-in-time teaching. So here are some other tools that I've used before. Now, this isn't an all-inclusive or exhaustive list, so I'm sure you guys may have some other different tools that you've used for maybe synchronous courses or hybrid courses or online learning, and different tools for student response systems. I would ask you to go ahead and put those in the questions so that way we can continue to learn from each other. But again, some of the tools that I've used instead of Zoom, we have Blackboard. Blackboard has an awesome video sharing feature, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeetings, WebEx, Google Hangouts, FaceTime. And for my student response systems, iClicker, Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, Mentimeter, Socrative. So there are a lot of different tools that you can use or options that you can choose from in order to achieve the same goal. So what do my classes actually look like? How do I utilize these tools for engagement? So again, just as a review, I typically do a 10 to 15-minute lecture. And in that lecture, it's time for me to discuss theorems and definitions and let's do a few problems. So that's my I do and my we do time. And then if we're in class, the students will get into groups. If we're on Zoom, the students will get into breakout rooms. And they have an opportunity to, again, do the problems together, to learn from each other, to have peer instruction. I always tell my students, you may know A and B, your peer may know C and D. Well, once you discuss and put those things together, now you guys know how to do the entire problem. So encouraging them to not only discuss what they know, but to discuss what they don't know because they can learn from each other. And then there's the self-assessment where the students will perform or do some type of assessment on the iClicker. So let's see. Clicker question. How comfortable are you with using student response systems in your class? How comfortable are you with using student response systems in your class? A, very comfortable. B, somewhat comfortable. I'm sorry, B, yep, somewhat comfortable. C, uncomfortable. D, very uncomfortable. And E, maybe unsure, you haven't really tried it yet. Okay, awesome. All right, I'm going to give maybe about 5 more seconds. And then we'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, that was a long one. Yes, it was. Okay, let's stop it. All right, very good. And so we see the results here. So one of the things that you're seeing in real time is something that I show my students. Now, as the results are coming in, I don't show it to them. You can hide these results because I don't want them to be swayed by their peers' answers. And if the results are scattered, if you see here, we can clearly see most people are saying B. But if the results are scattered, maybe kind of 20% or 30% going straight across, then that would be an opportunity for me to have the students to discuss and see if they can sway one person in their group to a separate answer. So I just wanted to show you the results really quickly so you can see what you would see from an instructor's perspective. Okay, but from these results, very good. Thank you all for participating. I see that most people are somewhat comfortable. So great. So what would a lecturing opportunity look like? So here again, I'm in math, and this would be a calculus course. So in this calculus course, I am discussing the product rule. And I go over with the students, okay, so we see here that the product rule, when we're taking the derivative of two functions that are being multiplied times each other, we get f times g of x. And when we're taking the derivative of that function, it's equal to the derivative of the first times the second function, the original second function, plus the first function times the derivative of the second function. Now, I understand that we have a very broad audience, so I don't want you guys to freak out. So people are probably like, what? I haven't seen calculus ever, or maybe since college. That's okay. So I'm going to go over this again, just very basic. So here, when I'm taking the derivative of a product of a function, the derivative, this is the derivative notation, then I'm going to take the derivative of the first function times the original second function plus the first function times the derivative of the second function. Now, one thing it's important to note is that the derivative of the product is not equal to the product of the derivatives. We see here we have a sum. Again, let me say the derivative of the product, sorry, my pencil is having a mind of its own today, is not equal to the product of the derivative. And you can see similarly for the quotient rule, we have a similar type equation. And we can see the derivative of the quotient is not equal to the quotient of the derivative. So this would just be something I would explain to my students. And then I say, okay, we would discuss this and make sure that we're all on one accord here. And I say, okay, you guys, so let's have a clicker question. And let's make sure that you understand this definition. So if you guys would be so kindly to go ahead and answer this question. Again, if you have no clue, just take a guess. This isn't a real class. You won't be counted off. All right, about 5 more seconds. All right, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and stop now. And now I'll show the results to the class, or I won't. And I'll say, okay, based on these results, because we're pretty scattered, and I'll warn students, remember, the answer that has the biggest number isn't always the correct answer. And so in this moment, if we were maybe on a Zoom call, I would put the students in a breakout group. They would have an opportunity to discuss, and then we would come back and repoll this same question. So I'm not going to do that today for the sake of time, but just to give you an illustration of how I use the student response systems in my class. And when we repoll, I would come together and say, okay, you guys, so here is the correct answer. So we see here that the answer is A. Now, what I do want you to do is look at your device and observe what do you see on your own individual device. So this gives that student an opportunity to feel either confident in what they just answered or to think, you know what, maybe I should ask a question. So in this moment, I may ask the student, okay, you guys, do we need to go back and review this definition? Let's look at it one more time. And then I'll also ask them, why did you choose the answer that you chose? And we'll discuss that and why these questions or why those answers weren't correct. So again, this allows the students for an opportunity to do self-reflection and self-assessment. So I would do that if I'm doing maybe just definitions or concepts. And then again, this would be maybe with some problems. So here is my lecture moment. We'll do this problem on the board. And once we do the problem on the board, okay, I'll review what we did so that they have these in their notes. And we'll discuss the product rule, being the derivative of the first times the derivative of the second. Or I'm sorry, identifying the first versus the second. So you guys are going to walk away from here with a little bit of calculus recalling. So here's the first function, here's the second function, here are the derivatives of the respective functions, and now we're going to use the formula. So the derivative of this product would be the derivative of the first function times the second function plus the first function times the derivative of the second function. So we've gone through this problem on the board. We've gone through this problem again to review it. And so, okay, is everyone good? Do we need to do another problem? This again gives students an opportunity to self-assess. I'll give them another problem to do, and they'll do it again in their groups, whether on Zoom or in the classroom. So they can do their problems together in groups. And even if you're doing asynchronous, I know no one in here said that they prefer asynchronous learning, but even if you're doing an asynchronous course, the students can work this problem out on a sheet of paper and submit it in their LMS. And then from there, once all hearts and minds are on one accord, okay, let's do this clicker question. And let's see if you're actually understanding what you think you're understanding and what I think I'm conveying. Now, one thing that I would like to say is sometimes the results don't come the way that you had hoped they would come. You poll, you repoll, and maybe the results are still uneven. Maybe the correct answer isn't the highest one. Well, that's an opportunity for us as educators, for us as instructors to then do a self-assessment and say, okay, what do I need to do differently to explain this to the students so that they can actually understand it? So I love these opportunities because in class, students are having an opportunity to reassess or to assess, and we're also having an opportunity to assess to show the students what a learning opportunity looks like. So what are some of the other advantages of iClicker? And like I said, there are multiple student response systems. I prefer to use iClicker. Well, I was introduced to iClicker when I started using Achieve with our calculus course. And iClicker is a part of that course. And one of the reasons why, or a part of the Achieve platform, one of the reasons why I loved using iClicker is that all of these questions that I've shown you, they were already pre-generated from the Macmillan text, and I didn't have to create these questions. If I had to create these questions, that would be a whole nother level of anxiety for me because I'm not good at creating questions this great. But one of the other awesome things that iClicker has that I noticed some of the other student response systems didn't have was the target response. So here would be an example of a target response question. So in math, I can ask students for maybe max and mins and points of inflection. Maybe if we were doing an icebreaker question, someone would ask, hey, put up a map, identify which state you're from. Or if you're in a geography class, and you give the capital of a certain state, hey, identify what state this is. Or a biology, hey, here's a skeleton, identify where the such and such bone is. So the target response questions can be used in a number of different ways. So for example here, what is the maximum on the following graph? Now, in my lecture time, I will tell students there are two types of maximums. There are absolute max, which is the complete highest point on a graph, and then there are local maximum. So a local max is wherever the graph goes from increasing or going up to decreasing or going down. And remember, we read a graph just like we read a book from left to right. So you're looking at where is the maximum? Where is this graph going from up or increasing to down or decreasing? Now, give me 1 second. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and use your mouse or use your phone, use your finger, and identify where do you think the maximum is. And again, remember, this is a webinar, so if you don't get it right, that's okay. So where is the maximum on the following graph? Again, reminder, maximum is where does the graph go from going up to going down? All right. So I am going to go ahead and stop now. And again, I'm going to show you. It says select the region you want to mark as correct. So students can see immediately whether they receive the correct answer or not. Instant feedback. Very good. So based on that question, then we would have a discussion about where's the minimum. So what are some benefits of the iClicker or any student response system? Again, it enhances student engagement. I found that my classes are a lot more interactive. Students are talking to each other. Even the students who are normally quiet, now they can interact and they can engage without being put on the spot or without being felt like, oh, I don't know it, I'm afraid to ask a question, because they can see, especially if you show the responses, they can see that they're not alone, that other students may also not be getting it correct. So that's one area. It gives immediate feedback for not just us, the professors, but also for the students. And it allows both parties to gauge their mastery of the content. What are some other benefits specifically of iClicker that I've seen? Is the target response questions, like I mentioned a second ago. And other student response systems, you can do icebreaker questions in the beginning of class. You can do exit questions. I've heard people say, hey, what's the muddy middle? What's that muddy question that you maybe don't quite still understand? Because you can put in free response questions. Performance and participation. So hopefully you saw throughout this webinar that it gave you an opportunity to participate and to actively engage and to see your own performance. You can also use it for attendance. If you didn't want to do any questions that day and you just wanted it to do attendance, you can set it at the beginning of every class and students can log in. Also, it integrates wonderfully with your LMS. At Spelman, we use Moodle. So it integrates with Moodle so student can see their performance and their participation averages whenever they log into their Moodle gradebook. So based on some of these advantages that I've mentioned, which of these benefits do you feel would have the greatest impact on your courses? Give me 1 second. Let me go back to multiple choice here. All right, awesome. So which of these benefits would have the greatest impact on your course? So student engagement, the immediate feedback, the mastery of the content, to enhance participation, or for students to see how their participation is, or just to deliver icebreaker or exit questions. And there are several other benefits. What I would ask you all is if you have other benefits that I haven't mentioned, if you can put it in the chat, if you click the questions, if you can put it in the chat and share with us, that would be great. When I asked the previous question, I know some of you said that you were somewhat familiar or somewhat comfortable using the student response systems. So if there's anything that I haven't mentioned, please, please, please put it in the chat so that we can all, again, continue to learn from each other. All right, awesome. So I see several people are looking to enhance their student engagement. And that was one of the reasons that I used the iClicker. Well, actually, all of these were reasons that I used iClicker and student response systems in my courses. Now, there's one other feature in iClicker, and it is an assignment feature. I haven't used it much, so I'm just gonna talk about it briefly. But when we transitioned to virtual learning and we were just completely online, I did discover that iClicker did have an assignment feature. So if you were interested in using iClicker in maybe an asynchronous course, then you could do that as well, just by creating an assignment. And the students can still go in with their phones or student response systems and answer the questions or create a quiz. So some things that I do want to mention, considerable opportunities. So as you notice today, we do get immediate feedback, but like I mentioned throughout the webinar, sometimes that's a plus and sometimes that's a minus. And what I mean by minus is only that we're not expecting the results. So I mentioned before, you poll the classroom, right? You allow the students to get into breakout groups and you repoll. Our goal or our hope is that once we repoll, that everyone has the right answer. Well, does that happen 100% of the time? No, it does not. So when that doesn't happen, what is the fallback plan? What happens if the students still don't understand? What are we going to do as professors? Also, something to consider that I've learned through my time in using iClicker and different student response systems is to be flexible with the students, to be flexible with ourselves, and with technology. Understanding that technology is not infallible and to always, always, always have a backup plan. So just as a quick wrap up, again, we started this webinar with some terminology to make sure we were all on the same page with what we meant by in-person, synchronous, asynchronous, and hybrid. And then we looked at the gradual release model for the course structure and how I implement the iClickers and student peer instruction in my classes. And then we actually looked at a live example for tools for engagement. And I would like to thank you all so much for attending this webinar and for taking time out of your busy schedule I know we all are very busy, but thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in this webinar. And now, if you guys have any questions, if you could please put the questions in the chat, and one of our organizers will look through the chat and let us know any questions that are coming through the chat. Again, thank you guys so much.
So Kiandra, we have a couple that had come in. Thank you very much, by the way. We had a couple that have come in during the course of the webinar.
Okay.
And I want to take them in the order they came in. Do you grade their iClicker work? Someone was wondering how if you grade it, how you grade it, that kind of thing.
Yes, that is a great question. So iClicker has a feature that you can parse the grade however you want. So what I do is I give the students maybe 1/3 credit or 1/4 credit just for answering the question. Because I want them to get some points for trying. And then, so let's say if I do 1/4 credit for answering the question, and then the other 3/4 would be if they actually received the correct answer. Now, again, you can distribute that however you want. You may want to give them 3/4 credit or 2/3 credit for answering, just for answering the question, and then that other 1/3 credit if they actually got the question correct. Also, what you can do is once you go back into your reporting in Clickers, if you you can delete certain questions if you're like, you know what, maybe this question wasn't written correctly, or maybe I didn't do as good of a job as I thought I would with lecturing that, and so I don't want that to count against the students. You can go in and delete select questions. Lastly, if you notice on some of the questions, I actually marked the correct answer. Only the questions that you mark the correct answer for will be graded during class time. You can also, again, go back after class and look at your reporting, and you can grade the other questions if you want, or just leave them ungraded. So you have a lot of flexibility as an instructor on how you administer the grade. But yes, I do give students grade. That's a part of their participation grade for me.
Thank you, Kiandra. We had a couple questions about the price of this, and I'll take that. I think that's more of a McMillan question, and it's a quick answer. It's no extra charge. It comes for free. It's included with the Achieve courseware. I'll quickly show you how this works. I'm gonna make myself the presenter. I just want to show people very quickly. So this is the Achieve courseware. As you can see, it's got a lot of the stuff that you used to if you've used these type of systems before. It's got all the resources in there. It's got a grade book. We've actually got a wonderful report section, but that's for another day. To integrate the iClicker, you just go to the grade book. You click. Actually, I've already integrated this, so I would disconnect and I'll show you how quickly I can integrate it. So if I want to integrate this, I just click Sync iClicker. I sign into my account. I already have the courses I've created here. This happens to be, this course right here. So I've already created it. I link the course. I can also create a new one from here and just take it from there. So if I haven't created something on the iClicker side, that's how quick it is. And then the students have automatic access and you can start using it right away. So that's the answer to how much does this cost, and a very quick demo on how it works within the architecture, if you will.
And Scott, with that, I'm sorry, can you go back to the screen, what you were just on?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
If you go back to the home, to the house.
Yep.
And you see resources, if you were to click on resources, again, so I'm doing calculus. So if you click on resources, and if you need more information, just let me know. I'm more than happy. I'll put my email address in the chat. I'm more than happy to help you through this. But if you click on resources, all of the iClicker questions are, scroll down some, I think maybe click on assessment.
Well, the probably easy.
Oh, this is okay. So it may not be in here because.
But if I go to iClicker.
Okay, so all of the iClicker, I know in calculus for every section, we may not see it here because this is a test course basically for these types of webinars. But in the calculus course, for instance, there are multiple iClicker questions for every single section. every section.
Well, I can
And
tell
I've
you
never seen that in another platform.
one way to find them in any of the courses, honestly, is to go to the in-class activity guides. And if you, well, they're not going to be called GHHHH, so that's why it's not finding them. If you go to the in-class activity guides, then you will find not just the iClicker stuff, but the activity guides to accompany the iClicker stuff. So let me toggle that again. So there's, in this particular course, there's 18 of them. These are iClicker questions paired with an activity that you can do pre, in, and post class. It breaks it all down for you, but it also includes a deck that has iClicker questions. So that's a clicker question deck. There's 18 of these different activities in this course. It's about an average number for any given course. This happens to be a Principles of Economics course. But that's a pretty average number. Most of the courses have between, I want to say, 15 and 30 of these in-class activity guides, which incorporate iClicker. You can use them without iClicker too. I just think they happen to work a lot better if you build that piece in. It's got a pre and in and post class sort of plan using the various resources in Achieve, including the iClicker resource. So the
Scott,
QA.
do you have any other questions?
Any other questions? I think we had one more question. Let me quickly just look here. How do students feel about using this in class?
Oh, now that's a great question. My students absolutely love it. They actually ask for it. So if I have a lecture and we don't have iClickers, they're like, "What? What's going on?" And I think the reason why is because many of the students, if you teach traditional students, many of the students in this generation are coming up with technology. They're coming up with gaming. And when I say coming up, they're raised, from very little. Everything is gaming devices, right? Whereas in maybe previous generations, we had wooden blocks, this generation have iPads. And so they enjoy the gaming feature of it. And I would say sometimes it becomes healthy competition because yes, they want all of their peers to succeed, but they also want to see, okay, did I get this right? Okay, yep, I'm doing better than I did yesterday. Okay, yeah, I'm really getting this. So those are the types of feedback that I get from students. And like I said, they really enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Kiandra. I think that's the end of the questions. I am going to send to the whole audience. This will go out in the follow-up email as well. If you want to request access to Achieve, click that link and you can request access to your specific discipline, course, etc. It's a couple of drop downs and you'll be able to find out if we have of course, if you're an instructor, that's free access. We have training too if you want, but we're happy to send you access, let you sort of kick the tires on your own and you can sign up for training when you're ready. But thank you for attending this today. We will be sending a recording out to folks and we hope you have a wonderful week.
And also, I'll put my email address in the chat, so or in the questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
And if you want, Kiandra, you can include that in the follow-up. We'll talk about that. Oh wait, there looks like there's one more potential question.
Okay.
But I'm not seeing it. Maybe that was just Alana's. No, there wasn't. False alarm. Thank you again, folks. Really do appreciate your time. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.